Hello, I'm Het, and welcome to All Het, No Cattle. I already had a video planned for today, but I was having a hard time getting behind it. It wasn't really exciting me, and I like to do projects which get my blood up a little bit. But then this came out. Steve Shives, Snowflakes, and Free Speech. Perfect. Now in this video, Steve basically goes over his points from earlier ones where he talks about how free speech is only allowed for the people who have a right to talk, and that right is determined by Steve. But he makes a few interesting gaffes, unintentionally of course, which I thought were worth pointing out. He references a New York Times article by a provost at New York University named Ulrich Baer, and I have something to say about that article. With that said, let's get to it. Okay, first, let's listen to Steve try to give a thumbnail of this article. And by thumbnail, I mean droning on and on and on. Forgive me, this will last a little while, but I have no choice. Steve's a real motor mouth, as you all know.
Baer argues really persuasively and really articulately that it is actually those folks, the so-called snowflakes, who are the true champions of free speech, not the apologists and the defenders of Spencer and Yiannopoulos and all of the other assorted deplorable people, the hate mongers and purveyors of ignorance and intolerance who have for some reason been granted platforms on college campuses with alarming frequency over the last few years.
This opinion piece is quite long. It took me several minutes to read, but it repeats itself over and over, and not in a good way. This op-ed piece is marked by constantly arguing against itself, sometimes within just a couple sentences. Here is a prime example. In fact, the prime example. Once you examine this paragraph, you don't need to examine anything else in this article. It's that blatant. Free speech protections, not only but especially in universities, which aim to educate students in how to belong to various communities, should not mean that someone's humanity or their right to participate in political speech as political agents can be freely attacked, demeaned, or questioned. Okay, let's look at this in two parts. First, which aim to educate students in how to belong to various communities. If you're restricting free speech, if you are keeping people off campus just because you don't like their views, you are restricting the ability of these same students in choosing what communities they want to belong to. If you tell them outright, these views are bad, you shouldn't listen to them, you're making up their minds for them. And that is not what a university is about. A university education should provide one the opportunity to explore different ideas, explore different things. So let's go to the second part. Should not mean that someone's humanity or their right to participate in political speech as political agents can be freely attacked, demeaned, or questioned. That obviously works if you're on the proper side of the argument, what Ulrich would say. If you're on the good side of the debate, then that means someone like an illegal alien or a transgender person should not be allowed to be freely attacked, demeaned, or questioned. They should have an open platform. That's fine. I don't have a problem with people who I disagree with to be able to do that, because I believe in free speech. Now here what they're saying is, you can't attack these people. You can't demean them or question them. Yet, your side is allowed to attack the Trump side, if you will, to attack the free speech advocate side. You're allowed to call them such things as Nazis, or alt-righters, fascists, or even just Trump supporters, and shut them down. Aren't you denying their right, as you put it, their free speech protection, as you put it right here, to not be freely attacked, demeaned, or questioned? That's exactly what Antifa is doing. That's exactly what the protesters, including Antifa, did to Milo. That's what they do to Professor Jordan Peterson. That's what they do to other opponents of their so-called ideals, of their sensibilities. You can't have it both ways. You can't demean the people you judge unworthy, yet not be demeaned yourselves. Or, everyone should be allowed to participate in political speech as political agents. Like you just said right here. It's in black and white. Make up your mind. Stop with the hypocrisy. Stop with the special protections. Grow up. That is the article in a nutshell. On one hand, it wants an open platform for people deemed marginalized. And it brings up Black Lives Matter at the end, so we know they're on the right side of history. However, it fails to realize how this group of people, these snowflakes on college campuses, are marginalizing an entire swath of the U.S. population. It's maddening. I barely got through it before I was ready to pound my head right through the monitor. Okay, so that's enough seriousness. I promised you some gaffes. This is what I'm going to do. We're going to count the number of times Steve compares Milo to Richard Spencer by lumping them in the same category as people who promote intolerance, hate speech, yada, yada, yada. Say what you will about Milo, say what you will about Richard Spencer, they're not the same category. They don't belong together, except in Steve Shives' tiny little mind. So let's count the number of times Steve puts them in the same box. Ready? Go.
Speakers such as Milo Yiannopoulos or Richard Spencer
1.
Protesting people like Spencer or Yiannopoulos.
2.
Often the excuse used when awful people like Spencer and Yiannopoulos and others of their ilk are invited.
3.
People like Richard Spencer and Milo Yiannopoulos have nothing new to say.
4. Can he go much higher?
A lot of folks in the atheist and skeptical community especially believe that when they are defending the rights of awful people like Spencer or Yiannopoulos, or awful groups like neo-Nazi groups or the Ku Klux Klan or other white supremacist or white nationalist groups, to speak.
5. Plus bonus groups, just to make sure you realize that they're all the same. Everyone is equal in the eyes of Steve.
Then I don't see how you can justify choosing to defend neo-Nazis and people like Richard Spencer and people like Milo Yiannopoulos.
6. The suspense is killing me.
If you believe in freedom of speech, you should be on the side of the protesters. You should be not defending the rights of people like Spencer and Yiannopoulos and others like that to spread their hatred.
7. Lucky 7. And there you have it. Lucky 7 is the winner. I'll be honest, when I first watched this video, I tried to keep track of how often this happened, but I lost count. When I put together this little clip sequence, I pre-recorded the counts in one batch, and I counted up to 7 and then stopped. I thought, he can't go to 8. This isn't that long of a video. And I got it right, by pure chance, trust me. Okay, enough about that. Let's look at one last diatribe from Steve. He's trying to sound intelligent. He's trying to sound like he's making a point for his side. But in fact, he argues against it completely. These people can't keep their narrative together for more than a few seconds at a time. Listen to this and you'll hear exactly what I'm saying.
But we can at least decide amongst ourselves that the principle we should follow is not only freedom of speech, but guaranteeing freedom of speech to the largest possible number of people, maximum freedom of speech. And we should not let our idealization of the principle of perfect freedom of speech or perfect tolerance prevent us from achieving the attainable goal of maximum tolerance or maximum freedom of speech.
What can I say? He believes in freedom of speech, but he doesn't know he believes in freedom of speech. Now, Steve references something in that bit. Something called the paradox of tolerance. And a gentleman named Popper came up with this, not Steve. It says, a tolerant society can't tolerate intolerance, because if it does, intolerance will completely take over. We'll shut out all tolerance and create a completely intolerant society, which is bullshit. Look at Steve. He is incredibly intolerant. The Blockbot alone proves that. But is he winning? Is he taking over? No. The freedom of speech side, the side that I belong to, is moving along. It's beating back his ideals, but it'll never shut them out, nor does it have to. You can't keep every little fringe group from having its opinions. They're always going to be there. What matters is keeping your principles. And that's where the basic human right of freedom of speech comes in. They're free to say what they want. We're free to say what we want. What's more perfect than that? We'll end there. I want to thank you all for coming. I really appreciate the attention that you give these videos. If you're a new subscriber, feel free to look back through the old catalog, check out the videos I've done previously, and let me know what you think. Do you see a progression? Do you think I'm in a rut? Give me your ideas. I'm more than happy to hear them. Unlike Steve. Okay, I had to get that last shot in there. I'm human after all. Anyway, until the next time, be well. And as always, thank you for your attention.